طيب واحنا we're now recording the class. This is me again, Dr. Sam, and this is A230A, and this is I think 1303. So what is it that we're having? Yani, that was we started obviously last week, and we're doing this week, and obviously this is the second week that we're doing the Duchess of Malfi. And the Duchess of Malfi is a Jacobean drama. It's a play, it's a tragedy, and it is more specifically, it's a revenge tragedy. And by now, you know what a revenge tragedy is, right? How much did we go with the play? How much do you still remember about the play? Okay, let's break it down to its basic components, and that would be our point of departure. So it's a play, and typically if it's a play, it has characters, it has a setting, time and place, obviously. What else about plays? Um, we have a plot, obviously, storyline. Can somebody come to the mic and tell us about the characters? Let's start with the place. We're going to start with the setting in terms of time and place. Yalla, Nagwa, come to the mic.
Yes, the takes place in one of the states, which is Malfi. Previously, at that time,
One of the states in the US, ولا
no, I was coming to that. It was one of the states in Italy at that time. Still, Italy was not united, so the type of the areas were divided according to states, and
You mean
one
you're
of the
talking about
states.
Italy, right? Italy, right?
Yes, yes, Italy,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
And they were divided into states. So the play takes place in Malfi, and it
Mm.
discusses or it is about the Duchess of Malfi. So it's like the
Okay.
Duchess at that time was similar to the
So
Queen.
it's yeah, that's so the setting or the place here is the dukedom of Malfi. It's like a
Yes,
kingdom, a small one, right?
yes,
Where on top of the social ladder, on top of the government, there is a sitting queen or a sitting duchess. Do we know her name? Are we given her name?
uh, no, it was not given. She's
Uh,
only known as the Duchess of Malfi.
nice. Okay, good. So this is in terms of setting. Can we talk about the time? When is this happening, unfolding? When is this unfolding? Yeah, what's still with you? Yeah, I forgot your name, Manish. Nagwa. Yeah.
Yes,
Mm,
it is happening during the Jacobean era.
yes.
Yes,
Mhm.
specifically when the time that year, I'm not really sure. I don't remember.
That's fine. You don't have to remember, I mean, specific dates. We're talking about perhaps transitioning from the 16th to the 17th century, right?
Yes.
Okay. So can you tell us, yani part of the setting would be setting the context. What kind of ideas and ideologies did we have at the time, Nagwa?
Yes, during that time, it was somewhat an era of change.
Mm,
There are different changes. There are also still some concepts or some ideologies that the people had, which was that men were like doing most of the jobs. They were the rulers and so on. And the story basically is about when there is this kind of change. We have here the Duchess, who is the Duchess of Malfi, who is in charge, not a man. So it deals somewhat with this concept of the woman being in charge, not the man. And we can also see that throughout the play when she marries Antonio, I think his name was, in secret. And it also deals with how like people view or how the men view women and how their point of view is about that they do not they somewhat disregard women, and they don't believe that they are capable of holding such position and so on. Like men have their certain ideologies about women.
yes. Uh-huh. Yeah, that's a good point that you're making. Yeah, Nagwa. Thank you so much. So this is in terms of the climate of ideas. So of course, to add to this idea of women and how they were perceived and seen, we also have the idea of established order, the idea of mores and norms that that your society expects you to follow, and what happens if you don't follow those mores and norms, and the dire consequences, right? So we're talking about this transition from perhaps medieval times to the early modern times, where the ideas are bound to change. We're also talking about the transition from Catholicism to Protestantism and what this entails. You know, Protestantism is about being self-made, depending on yourself. When it comes to marriage, it's a marriage of equals. I mean, women are treated perhaps in a more tolerant and in a more in a fairer way. I'm not saying that women at that time received or got their complete rights. No, but at least we're moving a step forward. And these are ideas that we're seeing in the play. The fact that the play ends tragically with everything crumbling and collapsing over the head of the Duchess doesn't mean that the Duchess, or I mean, and her ilk, the people or the women that she represents didn't achieve. They did, but perhaps society was holding on to those old beliefs still. Okay, that's interesting. So let's talk about the characters. Who would like to come to the mic and give us the characters? The Duchess of Malfi, everyone. Shaden, go ahead.
Yes, doctor. There's the Duchess, and there's Antonio. Um, Antonio is her steward. Also, there's the murderer that worked for her husband.
Human,
I forgot his name.
yeah, Busola. You mean Busola, right?
But yes, Bosola.
Mhm.
Yes. You want me to
Okay.
say who the Duchess is?
Yeah, yeah, can you give
Okay.
us the other characters if you still remember any? We still
Other than
have,
these three?
yes,
Okay. And Delio.
we have
Just looking at my notes.
Delio, and we still have Ferdinand, and we still have the other brother, right? Okay, that's interesting. Thank you so much, Shaden. Okay. What's the plot? What's the storyline, if any? Can somebody else come to the mic and share with us the storyline? What happens when, perhaps how? We have been talking about the whys for quite some time, even before. Yeah. Nagwa, are you still raising your hand because you forgot it raised, or what?
No, I'm ready for the next question.
Yeah, okay. Right. Give us the plot.
Yes, so the plot basically is that the Duchess, the husband of the Duchess, dies and she becomes a widow, and her brothers, the Cardinal and Ferdinand, uh, are trying to convince her not to marry another person.
Mhm.
But like basically, she goes and marries someone else who is Antonia and who is from a lower class. And one of the reasons that the Cardinal and Ferdinand do not want her to marry is that they do not want her to be the cause of the loss of their honor. They believe that if she marries someone of a lower status, that means that their honor is disturbed and they won't have their rank anymore. And also, one of the reasons might be because they want to keep in control of some of the positions. She has given them some duties, and that they believe once she marries, that those duties or those responsibilities will be taken away from her. And so basically, it is around her marrying Antonio in secret and the events that happen because of this event.
Yeah, great. Yeah, this is as far as we went the other day, and okay, the prior classes. Yeah, thank you. Please drop your hand. Okay. Remember the framework that we're working within, which is tragedy. To be more specific, it's revenge tragedy. And of course, we spoke about the traditions and the conventions of revenge tragedy. Okay, the background is normally decadent courts, royal courts, where there is, I mean, corruption is rampant, crime perhaps is rife. What else but revenge tragedies? You normally have the character of the malcontent. Spoke about the malcontent, and we said that Busola is the representation of this tradition of malcontent. A malcontent is a low-born character who happens to be in the court, who lashes out against corruption. He believes that normally people climb up the the social ladder and they get promoted not because they are good and they merit the position that they get. No, they get there and they get promoted because they are sycophants and because they kind of flatter the Duke or the people around him. They are not very honest, they are not very sincere. So he goes against that. But it's very strange that the same person who is attacking those things and exposing them is ready to be part of that, to be hired to kill people, to engage in those corrupt practices that he claims he is attacking and he is exposing. So this is the character of the malcontent. It's not limited to this play. We have seen it in other plays by Shakespeare and others. If you think of A Midsummer Night's Dream, you have the character of Malvolio, if I'm not mistaken, and other characters in other plays. So it's there. Of course, if it's a revenge tragedy, we talk about bloodshed and blood spilling, and there is a great deal of bloodshed there. And as if we said that this is a typical revenge tragedy, you have plays within plays, which is something that we're going to see today. We have the use of stage props and like boys and Bibles and other paraphernalia, like we're going to see. So this is these are some of the conventions of the revenge tragedy that we're going to see repeated and mentioned in the Duchess of Malfi. Again, we're stressing the fact that if Othello was about race and color, the Duchess of Malfi is about rank and status. Again, we're working or we're looking at things against this background of established order where you have a hierarchy. On top, you would have the king or the queen, and at the bottom, you have low-born individuals. And obviously, you don't mix. I mean, people on top shouldn't reach out to people at the bottom and the other way around. Reaching out here means that they don't get married. You normally keep to your ranks. If you're a king or a queen or whatever the case is on top, you marry from within your ranks. If you're low-born, you also marry from within your ranks. And there wasn't there wasn't this idea of social mobility like we see it nowadays, for example, where if you're low-born, for example, you can study very hard, you can get a university degree, and then you have you become you work very hard, and then you become I mean you can improve your status, and you can be better. I mean, you can have better positions and everything. Social mobility was very limited during the times. Perhaps what the Dutch started was the beginning of this merit-based uh, uh, merit-based classification of people. People are not classified anymore based on their inheritance and who they come from or who their fathers and parents are. People started to be judged based on their achievements, their hard work. So we haven't seen that much in the play, but we had the beginning of just that. For the Duchess to do what she did, of course, she perhaps was encouraged by an atmosphere of ideas that is changing. And I'm not saying that it changed altogether, because if it has changed altogether, I mean, her brother would have tolerated what she did, and she wouldn't have been killed, because I promise you she will be killed in Act 4. This is, of course, unfortunate, but it is an indication that the society hasn't changed completely towards this merit-based system where you're not judged based on your inheritance, on who your parents are, but you're judged based on your hard work and your real achievements. Let's move to the slides and see what we have in store for you today. So this is where we stopped last time. Let's see, no. No. Yeah. We were concluding Act 1, and we were kind of summing up the whole idea like what I just did. And then we started Act 2, where we're going to have this discovery. Discovery means that the two brothers are going to it will come to their notice that their sister is not only married, but she started to have kids. Um, they're going to receive, I mean, letters about just that, and they're going to make kind of arrangements for the punishment. She has to be punished, because if not for personal reasons, they are agents of society. This society, which is male, which is patriarchal, which is also inheritance based, and they get to know over time that she got married to somebody from beneath and below her rank. There is also this talk about Ferdinand and what part he does and plays. And again, of all the other characters, the shock with Ferdinand is like no other. He has issues with this kind of marriage, and you would ask, you wouldn't compare the two brothers and the reaction. The cardinal is going to submit eventually and say, yeah, she got married, and we're going to perhaps punish her, and that would be it. But Ferdinand is obsessed with his sister, and his attitude to the Duchess is obsessive and pathological. And this is something that we're going to talk about as we proceed. there is going to be this confrontation, and obviously, again, Ferdinand, and the language that he is using with his sister is um, very demeaning and very degrading and very, um, it tells us something about this kind of relationship, and what he really feels for his sister. Again, if anything, what the revelations of Ferdinand and what he does and what he says and the planning and the scheming that he does we wouldn't have any doubt in our mind that he is the real villain. All be fascinating one. Fascinating in the sense that he is very complex, that he is not a superficial villain like Iago, who was self-confessed and he doesn't hide his villainy and his evil nature. But this one is a complex bundle of contradictions, as we're going to see. So again, we're still talking about this complex character, the kind of reaction that he has towards this kind of marriage. And let's now move to the rest of the play. And we're talking here about the book, and we're talking about chapter 4, and the title of the chapter is Tragic Conflict. Again, so if the chapter is Tragic Conflict, so a conflict would mean that we have two sides, and I think by now we have established who the two sides are. Right? On one side, you have the Duchess, you have Antonio, and you have the new ideas, the idea of getting married or falling in love with people and getting married to them based on merit. There is obviously no discrimination between those who are high and those who are low. These are new ideas. This is the side, the first side, and on the other side, you have Ferdinand, the Cardinal, Bussola, and with them you have traditions, the old obsolete ones, where there is always this established order kind of thing, whereas there is always this idea that you have to stick to your class and to your level, and any attempt at transgressing against that or violating that would be met with violence, and violence can be as bad as being killed. And this is actually what will happen to the Duchess and Antonio later in the play. So this is what this part is about. It's about conflict, and with conflict, we're talking about a clash of ideas that will over time turn into violence and blood. So we have the um, the beginnings of this kind of conflict and clash of ideas, right from Acts 1. We have seen Antonio and his ideas, and what he thinks about, and you can always, we're always setting this against the ideas of Musul and stuff, and even we had those kinds of comparisons between Antonio and the other characters, especially the cardinal and Ferdinand. So this time around, the focus is if Act One for a large part was on this idea of love, of this idea of the Duchess reaching out to Antonio, courting him, and getting married to him. Act Two and the rest of the play, uh, and Acts 3 and 4 and 5 are all about death. And again, death as consequence to love, because obviously in the eyes of those people at the time, this is forbidden love. And the only remedy for forbidden love and forbidden marriage would be death and violence. Again, Act 3 is about this component that we normally see in tragedies, this idea of reversal of fortune. So you have fortune. Fortune means that you're lucky, your things are going well with you, and then you have a reversal of fortune where things turn nasty and bad. And you can almost tell who are we talking about here? Whose fortune are we talking about? Obviously, we're talking about the fortune of the Duchess, and we're talking about the fortune or the luck of Antonio. So what we have a discussion in Act 3 between Antonio and Delio. And through the revelations, we get to know that years have passed since Ferdinand promised or pledged that he's going to take revenge. So enough time for the Duchess to give birth to two more children, a son and a daughter. So again, according to critics, this scene is meant to indicate that time passed, so that when we get to know that she now has two more children, a son and a daughter, that wouldn't be a surprise for us. Again, another reason why we're having this scene is it's an indication that Ferdinand has come back to the Duchess court. So now we have Ferdinand and Bussola on the stage, and when they are together, we're going to start to see Ferdinand deterioration, mental deterioration in action. It's going to be a gradual kind of mental deterioration. Of course, he's so consumed with this idea of revenge, of this idea of punishing his sister. He's going to start to show us those kinds of things. Again, what do we have? We're having him asking Bussola for the key to the Duchess bed chamber. Okay, so you would ask, why would he ask for the key when he can go to the, you don't normally entertain people in your bed chamber, right? So bed chambers and bedrooms are very exclusive to people who sleep in them. So for the brother to ask for this is you find it very strange, which tells you that this guy is up to something, that he wants to say or do something, can be harm that he is going to cause to his sister. Again, this is one thing, and the idea that he is asking for a key doesn't, it means that he's not going to go and peacefully knock on her door and she opens the door for him. No, he is asking for a spare key, and this is another indication that he is up for mischievous or something bad or harm of a sort. Again, this is also out of keeping with his royal status. You would expect a royalty to behave in a a more decent way. You wouldn't sneak around people's chambers in order to do harm or anything of that sort. Again, this is the start of a long journey of dwindling and going down. He is degrading himself. Okay, we're talking about turning points here, where he's going to go, and we are now in the Duchess' bedroom. Again, and Ferdinand is waiting behind the curtains, or like they say in the wings. Again, I would like you to try to think of, to visualize she is at perhaps her parlor. She is perhaps getting ready for bed. She is in front of her mirror. I don't know, putting makeup or getting rid of this makeup. And in the background, without her knowing, Ferdinand is there. So as members of the audience who is privacy this, who is privy or can see that, but obviously the Duchess cannot see, you feel so tense. Of course, you like her and you don't want her to be harmed. So you, as if you're, at one point you may want to kind of break this fourth wall that is separating you from the actors, and go inside and alert her. Take care, this guy is up for something. So Webster generates suspense in his readers and spectators by making them aware of the presence of a threat. Ferdinand is a real threat, is a gathering threat, of which the characters on stage are oblivious. She doesn't know that he exists. Um, Again, where is her husband? Obviously, he is outside. I mean, whenever you need him, he's not there. He only comes when danger is over, and this is typical of Antonio. So she is left alone in her bedchamber, and Ferdinand enters. Again, she cannot see him, but we see him. And this is a sign of vulnerability and isolation. You feel that she's very vulnerable. She is isolated, and of course, you cannot trust. With what we now know about Ferdinand, you wouldn't trust that he is there in good faith, or he is there to say good evening or hello or whatever the case is. So this is obviously a major turning point when and whenever you normally have a tragic outcome seeming inevitable. So again, you have this shift and change of tone. She with Ferdinand and her maidservant, they were playing and they were happy and everything. But now it becomes tense and it becomes very serious. You're going to also notice in the speech between the two that Ferdinand is dominating the proceedings. He speaks most of the time, he curses, he accuses, he also threatens. He speaking the majority of lines and twice ordering his sister to be silent. He's not, of course, I mean, he can keep his composure and he is in control, but again, you can feel the depth of his anger and agitation. And he keeps asking rhetorical questions. Rhetorical questions are questions that you ask, but you don't wait for an answer, or you're not expecting answer, because they are more or less like comments and statements that you're making, but they take the shape of questions. When he addresses virtue, saying, virtue, where art thou hid? Where are you hiding? And he's talking about virtue as if his sister has committed something that is not virtuous. He is trying to say, where where have you been? I mean, he's asking virtue, obviously. Um, and then he starts to kind of rebuke and scold her. Die then quickly, and the howling of a wolf is music to thee, screech owl. He is also kind of invoking and thinking of um, all kinds of animal imagery. Die then quickly. He's talking about wolves and owls, and obviously these are very bad animals. And we're not talking about a lamb or nice, friendly animals and birds. So the last quotation shows his habitual fondness for likening human beings to the most negative aspects of the animal world. We're talking about owls, we're talking about wolves. And then he starts to talk about the husband. She told him, "Would you like to meet my husband?" Because she knows that this is marriage. I didn't do something wrong. Would you like to meet him? And obviously he says no. He declines the invitation to meet her new husband on the grounds that it would provoke such violent effects as would damn us both. He says that if I meet him, I don't know what may happen, but obviously uh, it, it's going to be something that I wouldn't be able to control, and it can cost us both, me and the husband. Um, um, Again, you would feel the anxiety and the moral ambiguity and perplexity that everybody is enmeshed with. Again, what he says and what he does would give you the feeling that Webster is intent on endowing this character, Ferdinand, with moral and psychological complexity. You wouldn't compare him to Iago or even Busoro. He is deeper. Again, he knows that she got married. He knows that she got married to a lowborn, but he doesn't know the identity of uh, the the husband yet. Again, he leaves the stage threatening her, saying that she is undone or ruined, which is, of course, anticipatory of what he will do. She is really undone, and she is really ruined, given what will unfold later. Um, um, this is Ferdinand's part. This is his language and what he did. Perhaps it would be a good idea to also listen from the Duchess, to hear from the Duchess and what she said and when she was confronting Ferdinand. Unlike Ferdinand, she was very straightforward. She was very cool and calm. Um, and she was very logical and reasonable. At one point, she would say, I pray, sir, hear me. I am married, and will you see my husband? She says, I'm married. I didn't do anything wrong. This is marriage, and marriage is legitimate. Please hear me out. Would you like to meet my husband? She's not hiding anything. And then when he says no, she was very, kind of shocked at his moral outrage and his reaction. And she said this very famous statement: "Why might not I marry? I have not gone about in this to create any new world or custom." This is amazing, by the way. This is very vivid, and this is a very poetic statement. She's saying, "Why might not I marry? Why wouldn't I marry? I had not gone about in this to create." Getting married is not creating a new custom or building or creating a new world. I didn't do something that nobody is doing. And I mean, hundreds and thousands of people are getting married as we speak. What's wrong with you? See how wise she is. She said, I didn't invent new words by getting married. I didn't create or set a new custom by getting married. I'm doing what everyone does on a daily basis. People get married and they get divorced and they get married again. And so what's wrong with that? See how wise she is. And again, you need to read this against the background and their thoughts. I mean, their thoughts and views of society towards women. Women were thought very little of. They were taken for granted. They were expected to only obey. They shouldn't argue. They shouldn't. Then people didn't think of them in along rational lines. You see that the table are turned now. You have gender reversals of roles, where you expect the man to be wise, to talk sense, and you expect the lady to at least not talk. But here the tables are turned, where a man is mad, the man is always cursing, is losing his temper, and he is um, in this unjustified moral outrage, and you have the woman behaving in a very in a very rational way, reasoning with him, breaking down the reasons why she is getting married, because everybody is doing it, and she is very, very calm. See. Um, Again, where we need not lose sight of the fact that according to the time, what she did is also radical and is unprecedented. So we shouldn't lose sight of that, but look at how wise she is. She's defending her cause. She's not losing her temper. This is what we're focusing on. So her simplicity of expression captures the irrationality of the brother's prohibition, and so invites our sympathy. So obviously we feel sympathetic towards her on a number of levels, again, because we're looking at things from a 21st century perspective, where marriage and interfaith and interrace, racial and intercaste marriages are now possible, and they happen I mean, every day and as we speak. But again, also what makes it compelling and what makes us even more convinced would be the simplicity of expression, her logic, which uh, um, again challenges the irrationality of the brothers and their prohibition. So we feel sympathetic towards her, and we say along with her that marrying a second time is indeed not to create any new world. Mm. So obviously we have this comparison between the Duchess and all the males, including her husband. Where is her husband now? It's not, he's not anywhere to be seen. You wouldn't find him when you most need him. He is obviously outside. When the confrontation will be over, he's going to come with a small pistol. Where is he? I mean, where have you been? So this is, of course, funny, and it tells you that the Duchess is obviously different. She takes matters into her own hands. She is in charge as royalty and also as a woman with character. She has a character. So the Duchess' conduct in this scene contrasts with that of her husband, who remains off stage throughout her ordeal and re-enters carrying a pistol and making threats only once Ferdinand is safely out of the way. See? So this is kind of funny and comic, and also very telling of who the Duchess is and who Ferdinand who Antonio is. So again, because she is a woman of action, she knows that this is not going to go right. Her brother is going to go, and obviously he has a plan and a scheme. So the first thing that she does is that she herself comes up with a counter plan for dealing with the situation, and she puts it immediately in action, again because she is a woman of action. She's not a woman of words. Okay, so what is she going to do? She came up with a plan where she is going to make Antonio and the kids run away and escape by claiming that Antonio has embezzled and has stolen money and things from her, from the court. She came up with this charge so that he can, when she makes him escape, people wouldn't, kind of suspect that there is something between the two. Again, this was a plan, and it was a good one, but this plan would false and fake as it is, it would also allow us to have Busola comment on this idea of fickleness of people in high places. I mean, Busola is going to. It is true that he doesn't like Antonio, but it is true that he thinks that Antonio didn't do anything, and that this is like a false accusation that he is accused of. And Busola highlights the fact that this is what happens with high people in high places. Today you are in favor and you are nice and everything, and tomorrow you may fall out of favor, and the next thing you know is you can be charged with theft. I mean, you can be they can get rid of you. I mean, he is stressing the fact that in this case the it was a whim upon the part of the Duchess. So Busola, with his usual linguistic creativity, presents an extended defense of the now disgraced Antonio. So Busola is going to have a soliloquy, is going to have the stage for himself, where he is going to give us his take on what happened. He's going to deliver a soliloquy in which he reveals to the audience that he's going to tell Ferdinand everything he has just learned. Again, we have this idea of whether Busola is sincere when he defends Antonio or not, because obviously he is hired by the two brothers, and he does their bidding. He kills whoever they think should be killed. So you cannot really believe him when he feels kind of angered and upset because of what happened to Antonio. You cannot really feel that he is sincere when he talks about the Duchess and all the people in high places, saying that they act on whims, that you better be away from them because today you are in favor and tomorrow you are out of favor for no obvious reasons. So as you can see, if anything, those soliloquies and what we know about Busola leaves us with this impression that Busola is an ambiguous character. Again, he fits very squarely into the mold and the character of the malcontent. Uh, this guy who despises corruption, but at the same time, he is hopelessly implicated in this kind of corruption. He wants social advancement, but hates the servility that comes with it. Again, of course, we know that Musola does not like Antonio that much, but perhaps he is like Antonio. He believes that if it happened with Antonio and he is now out of favor and disgraced, tomorrow it may happen to him. So, as a courtly official and as low somebody who is low-born like Antonio, uh, um, he believes that it's what happened may happen to him. He may be dismissed from his office on one of the whims, or whether the Duchess or her brothers, anybody in high place. Again, he is also telling us about something. So once you're out of favor, everybody else is is turning their back against you. Again, what is revealing about this kind of soliloquy is that, or in it, Bussola talks about the politician and the political schemers, and he refers to them as being the devil's quilted anvil. Again, this is a very vivid metaphor, and it is very typical of Bussola's linguistic inventiveness. Again, you may, or Bussola's behavior as an evil character may invoke the character of Iago, but obviously Bussola is more complicated and more nuanced. Uh, Again, he engages in talk about himself and about even um, he criticizes himself, albeit very briefly, when he says, "Oh, this base quality of intelligence." I mean, he says, I mean, he believes that he is no more than a hired killer and somebody who does others people bidding. He is more of a spy. But this is very momentary because the next moment he is acting on what the cardinal and Ferdinand are telling him to do. Uh, and again, he rambles on and on about what happens in the court and this wide disparity between people who are low-born and people who are very high, and how those low-born people are behaving in order to court the admiration and the satisfaction of people in high places. And we go here to what we call the dumb show, and the dumb show is one of the conventions of the revenge tragedy, and it's a show that is dumb. Dumb means that it's silent, where you have the characters behaving in front of you, acting, but they don't talk. And sometimes you ask, why don't they talk? And the short answer would be, if people are not talking and they are only using their hands and their movements and their lips are moving perhaps, and there is room for facial expression, sometimes this is more suggestive than restricting to yourself to speech, where obviously speech cannot say everything. So if if you see people moving in a certain way, having different facial expressions, and the interpretation is going to be uh, open. So everything is going to be open or up for grabs. The amount of suggestiveness is going to be more than when people are talking and they are saying something very specific. So in Act 3, Scene 4, Ferdinand and the Cardinal learn from Bussola about the identity of their sister. They know that it is Antonio who is married to their sister. And they know also that the family is seeking sanctuary or refuge in the state of Ancona. Um, Again, of course, the cardinal, because he is self-dramatizing, I mean, he's going to dress in the attire of a soldier, and he is determined to go and punish them. Again, he's not, when you look at the cardinal, he is more of a showy kind of person. He has his own vulnerabilities. But perhaps we're not interested in the cardinal as much as we are interested in Ferdinand, because it would mean a lot for Ferdinand now that he gets to know that talking about a low-born husband and none other than Ferdinand, whom he despises perhaps. So we have this kind of dumb show, which is a performance employing gestures and body movements without words. And again, why we don't have words? Because of the amount of suggestiveness that cannot be surpassed with the written or the spoken word. So by removing speech and focusing instead on mimed action, people moving their hands and their body, and there are facial expressions, of course. The dumb show achieves a highly symbolic pictorial style of theatrical representation. Again, it's one of the conventions of the revenge tragedy. So here, meaning is conveyed through spectacle, through the show, through movement and theater. I mean, it's all theater now and not words, rather than words. Again, it gives us some distance from the action instead of us being caught up in the emotions of the characters. So the visual tableau prompts us instead to step back and evaluate the moral implications of what is happening on the stage. Again, where is this taking place? I mean, the dumb show, it's taking place in a religious shrine. And obviously, part of this dumb show, you have stage directions that would set the music to be solemn kind of music, and it is sung by diverse church men. Again, and these are things that you see when in burial rituals, when people are, when people die, you normally have those kinds of solemn music. You have church people moving around in a certain way, which is very, again, anticipatory of what will happen to the Duchess later. Again, the cardinal, comic, and perhaps, and as he is putting on the attire of wars. You have a cross, you have a hat, you have ropes and ring. He takes on the trappings of a soldier, like when you talk about swords, helmets, shields, and spurs. Again, you have a vivid confirmation of the superficiality of the cardinal and his religious vocation. And again, this is another piece of evidence that there is a great deal of ecclesiastical corruption. And then there is talk about her wedding ring, which her brother is going to remove with violence. So, and this is not the end of the dumb show. Part of the dumb show, we have a dialogue between two pilgrims. Again, and they are commenting on what is happening. They would think that there is going to be a noble ceremony, and the atmosphere is one of distress and crisis, of course. And they are, kind of talking about whatever is happening. The fact that they know, for example, that the Duchess, or who represents the Duchess in the dumb show, is getting married to somebody who is below her rank, and they are commenting. Uh, they don't uh, uh, quite or entirely, you know, uh, exonerate her of the accusation. I mean, they still blame her for what she does. And they said, who would have thought so great a lady would have matched herself unto so mean a person? She is referring to the idea of rank, and that the fact that she demeaned and degraded herself by getting married to somebody who was lowborn. Again, but they believe that she shouldn't be treated the way she is being treated. She shouldn't be banished because she is a free prince. Again, we don't know their names because they can be anybody. Um, again, because they should remain neutral. So their commentary would invite us to grasp the moral and political significance of the Duchess' banishment rather than her own experience of it. So it presents her and her family as the victims of an institution and punishment. This is the conclusion that we get. Yeah, it is true that she may have been wrong in getting married to the wrong guy or the wrong person, but what happened to her is not acceptable according to them, and this is perhaps may be a reference to her being a victim of an institutional conspiracy, because she's challenging the institution. The institution here would be established marriage, established order, societal norms and mores. So what we have here, in order to kind of give us this, you have two devices. One of them is modern. We're talking about modernity here, modernism. We're talking about realism. When we talk about the characters, what they do, obviously this is very realistic. And we're talking about a medieval device, which is obviously the dumb show, which is meant to disconnect us and distance us from the action so that we don't identify with the characters or feel for them, because that would prevent us from considering the significance of things. Again, there is this reference to tragedies in the early modern times. We're talking, of course, about the element of revenge and the element of bloodshedding. Again, typical of those kinds of tragedies, you have the enactment of the Duchess torture and her death, and the punishment meted out to her for her forbidden love and marriage. Again, what do we see next? We see her imprisoned in her palace, and before they actually kill her and physically kill her, they psychologically kill her. They subject her to all types of psychological torment. At one point, for example, she is exposed to a dead man's hand, complete with wedding ring, and a wax tableau of her husband and children presented to her at that. And they make her believe, they give her the the impression that her husband is now dead, and here is his hand, of course, cut with complete wedding ring, and they give her the corpses of her husband and children in wax tableaus. So she would collapse. She would feel um, and think that they are killed, and of course she will collapse before she actually collapse out of them executing her, for example, strangling her. So again, they are trying to, before killing her, they are subjecting her to all types of psychological uh, torture and terror. Again, this was typical because this is part of the traditions and the conventions of the revenge tragedy. And this is something that we have seen in other contemporary revenge tragedy, like Thomas Kidd. Thomas Kidd was a famous revenge tragedy dramatist. He wrote something called the Spanish tragedy, along with other, uh, uh, you know, playwrights at the time. And there is this talk about what kind of characters we have, the props that people use, whether we're talking about effigies, whether we're talking about wax that lose, uh, 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 and stuff like that. So as you can see in early modern revenge tragedies, revenge often takes the form of a theatrical spectacle, a play within a play. And obviously, if it's a play within a play, you need a director. So the director here would be Ferdinand. So he directs everything. And again, over time, we as spectators or readers, we realize that the kids are not killed. Ferdinand is not killed, but this is obviously something exclusive to us. The Duchess is made to believe that they are killed. Again, part of this kind of psychological war that they are waging against her. So as you can see, Ferdinand, this aristocratic villain, uses theater as an instrument of control. Again, there is a great deal of talk about torture and the subsequent death of the Duchess. So you have a whole act devoted to this kind of torture and then the eventual murder of the protagonist. Um, so obviously, we know the cardinal is trying to punish his sister, and obviously he doesn't have an agenda behind it. It's Ferdinand who has aims. He doesn't want to merely kill her. He wants to bring her to despair, to break her spirit. Again, he has his own reasons, pathological and obsessive as they are. So again, she dies, it is true. She endures her torments for some time, but when she dies with so much courage and dignity. And while dying, she starts to express, um, you know, a lot of. She gives us a lot of pronouncements on death, on Christianity, and on her royal blood, and the fact that she, I mean, like any noble royalty she has to kind of endure, and obviously when she dies, she's going to be this is going to be the end of her suffering, and she's going to meet the good people over there. Uh, she believes that she will be reunited with her and with Antonio and after that. And again, she holds on to her rank and to her noble blood. Towards the end, she still says, "I'm Duchess of Malfi." Still, no, make no mistake about it. It is true that they could defeat me, they could kill me, but I'm still the Duchess. Again, you have all kinds of stage props where her execution, the killers are going to walk into the stage carrying a coffin, cords, and a bell. And Busula asks her, "Dust, not death, right?" I mean, he is very amazed at how courageous she is. She's accepting death with valor, with courage. And Busula is obviously mean as he is. He asks him, "Aren't you afraid of death?" She masters confidence, and she tells him that she believes in afterlife. And she would tell him, who would be afraid on it, knowing to meet such excellent company in the other what she says, I'm going to meet them. Why would I fear death? Because I'm going to meet excellent people over there. Again, she believes in afterlife, and perhaps death can be the end of suffering and all those kinds of things. And then we have her final speech. Again, there is this talk about and the soul's flight up to heaven. Uh, and I mean, the kind of image that we have, she imagines her murderers pulling heaven down upon her, and when finally she kneels, it is in a very last minute acknowledgement that heaven gates are not so highly arched as princes' palaces. I mean, yeah, this is also very profound. Again, religion obviously is not her only source of strength and support. She does not take her strengths of character from religion only. She also believes that death can be a release from intolerable suffering. And again, there is this talk about what kind of death method they are going to use. Are they going to strangle her? Are they going to perhaps poison her, stab her? And this is obviously very horrific. Um, Again, whatever the means is, if it tells you anything, it tells you about it's a test of character after all. I mean, for her, we're perhaps more focused on her reactions, and her reactions are very super, are very controlled, very defiant, very courageous. Again, she holds on to the idea of honor, the fact that she is an aristocratic, and for her, this is this can give her strength, and that would make her face the terror of death without flinching. Uh, this is, according to her, is a measure of her heroism. Again, these are all things that you would expect of a male. I mean, I'm talking about the time and what they thought. But to have this happening to a woman, and she reacting in this heroic way obviously is obviously quite unprecedented. And that's why when we talk about the play, and her heroine, the Duchess, we say it's the first fully tragic woman in the Renaissance drama. She is the Duchess here is the first fully tragic woman in Renaissance drama. Again, when she gets killed, the first one to kind of regret this kind of killing would be Busola. He's going to try to convince us that he feels sad and he is regretful. And a sign of his regret would be that he's going to take revenge for her. And he is the killer and he's going to take revenge from those who ask him. But we need to always remember that he doesn't feel regretful right away. He goes first of all to Ferdinand and he tells him that I killed your sister for you. Where is my money? And Ferdinand, because she is his sister after all, and because he has this immense and overwhelming love for her, he is trying to banish the thought that he was part of this kind of murder, that he masterminded it. I mean, he tries, I mean, he tells Musola, go away, I'm not going to give you any money. The fact that I'm going to keep you alive and I'm not going to punish you for that is enough reward. Go away. So obviously, Busola is going to feel, I don't know, I'm not convinced with the fact that he shows signs of repentance and he is regretful. I mean, it's not about that. He's a very complex character, if you ask me. So Pusola's repentance at the end of this scene is obviously a crucial element in the action to come. Again, because this repentance is going to be followed with him going on a killing spree, if you like, taking revenge from everybody else. So it is true that he seems genuinely moved by the Duchess' death. And but you it's you don't know. I mean, it's he is a killer after all. One way of perhaps convincing that he has this sense of repentance and regret to him, which may be genuine, is when she stares briefly back to life. He comforts her with a truth that Antonio, I mean, he tells her, listen, Antonio is alive. And that he has been reconciled to her brothers. So the first part is true, which is the fact that Antonio is alive, but the other part is a lie because he has never been reconciled with the brothers. Again, he would also talk about this piece of conscience that he doesn't now have. And the fact that I mean, not the whole wealth of Europe can give him this, peace of mind now that he killed her. Again, we need to always remember that this was all done after Ferdinand refused to award him for murdering the Duchess. Again, the focus here is on Ferdinand and why he didn't fulfill his part of the deal. I mean, Sola came to him and said, listen, I killed your sister like we agreed, give me the money. He said, no, go away. He cannot find it in his heart to accept this kind of, I mean, he masterminded it and planned it all the same, But again, he has this love for his sister after all. No matter how much he hates what she did, you normally hate the action, not the person, especially if we're talking about sisters and brothers. You would hate what your brother or your sister does, but you wouldn't hate him because it's difficult. Okay, so it is true that she's now killed at his request. It is true that he took revenge, or what he thought it was revenge, but he still loves his sister. So he's trying to kind of dismiss this thought. He doesn't want anybody to remind him, and obviously Busola is reminding him. Um, so he is trying to deny responsibility for it. I mean, deep down, he's not reporting to any person. He's not responsible. He's not going to be held responsible after all, but he is denying responsibility in front of himself. So it's very strange. It's a very strange thing that the ruler who blames the servant for committing the murder he asked him to do. It's a grotesque distortion of the courtly ideal elaborated upon at the start of the play. Again, uh, um, his extreme reaction to her death, I mean, I'm talking about Ferdinand, would also contribute to this mounting mental instability that we're seeing and that we're going to see all the more of as we proceed. And here are situations and scenes where it is very clear that he hates her action, but he loves her. At one point, he would say, he obviously he went to see her dead, of course, and killed, and he tells everyone, or he tells whoever is there, cover her face. Mine eyes dazzle. She died young. See, cover her face. Mine eyes dazzle. Dazzle, perhaps uh, tears that he is speaking about in his eyes. And she died young. It means that, I mean, it's like saying she's so beautiful. Why does or did this have to happen? Um, so by the close of the scene, he is falling apart and deteriorating into the lunacy. He became mad. That will characterize him in Act 5. I'll go hunt the badger by our light. It's a deed of darkness. So it's a deed of darkness. I mean, he's obviously referring to what he did. He says that it is a deed of darkness. What we did is dark. What we did is bloody and violent and everything. Very sad. And we move on to Act 5, and it's very strange. Let me stop here and talk about something, and perhaps ask you about this. And our example here would be Othello. Othello is going to be our standard. Where, or when, rather, when was Othello killed? Or where? You have 5 acts. In which act? Was he killed in Act 4 or 5? Can you remember?
I guess
So
the 5 when
in
he
Act,
killed himself.
yes, he killed himself in Act 5. If you still remember, Dr. Faustus. When was Dr. Faust killed? When, I mean, when his soul was taken out of him? Was it Act 4 or 5? It was in Act 5. If I give you other examples, Hamlet, King Lear, all those tragic figures, when they got killed, when they fell tragically, they fell tragically in Act 5. But here in the Duchess of Malfi, the Duchess was killed in Act 4. So we're starting Act 5 without the Duchess. Why? Why do you think in the other plays you would have the tragic hero killed and falling in Act 5, but here you have the Duchess killed and falling in Act 4? Is it bias? Is it female bias, for example? Yes, why not? It is. It indeed is. So this is something that feminist critics are going to refer to all the time and often, referring to the fact that it is true that Webster did women a good service by having a tragic heroine, not a tragic hero this time around, but perhaps he couldn't sustain this kind of favor. He couldn't sustain this kind of action by letting her stay until the end of the play. He couldn't because obviously he is male. Obviously, he was kind of expecting this kind of backlash from male audience, male members of the audience like himself. So again, there has been a great deal of debate and talk about the tragic heroine being killed in Act 4 rather than Act 5. So what do we have in Act 5 that we can wait for if the woman that we admire, and obviously we admire her for very good reasons. She is courageous. She is a beacon of everything good. She is very assertive. What business do we have in Act 5 if she is killed in Act 4? So perhaps we need to ask this question. What do you think will happen? What kind of act we will have uh, in Act 5 if we don't have the Duchess? Do you think it's going to be as successful as the other acts when she was there behaving and acting, defending herself and others, talking about honor, talking about uh, um, her choices, the choices that she should make, the fact that she didn't create new worlds, getting married to the one that she loves and chooses? What do you think in Act 5? So obviously, up until the end of Act 4, you have, let's look at this analogy. You have a full meal. You have a meal that is so diverse. It has different types of food, very delicious and very juicy and everything. In Act 5 would be more or less like bland and plain type of food where you have only one dish. It's going to be bland. It's going to be perhaps salt-free, no spices of any kind. Let's look at Act 5 and see what we have. Who do we have left in Act 5? Who are the characters that we still have? Are you still there?
I think the husband.
Yeah, the husband is there. Usola is there. The two brothers, right? What do you think is going to happen? Do you think life is going to be better after the death of the Duchess? Was the Duchess their only problem, and now that she is over, life is going to be honey and milk for them.
No, it will be worse, I guess.
What?
It will be worse.
Yeah. Yes. Again, let's look. Let's see. So again, what is so remarkable about Act 5 is that we don't have the Duchess anymore. And like I said, this has been um, the cause or the reason for so many debates. And Webster has been rebuked. He has been blamed by feminist critics for killing off his heroine at the end of Act 4 rather than at the end of the play, as is normally the case with tragic heroes. And uh, many critics would refer to the fact that now that the Duchess is out of the picture, dead and killed, you don't have much seriousness. The play in Act 5 turns into a farce, um, a comic farce, where as much as it is very bloody and violent, it makes you not smile, laugh, but it's a stupid kind of smile or laughter, where you have mistaken identities, where you have characters chasing each other to kill each other. It's more of a circus. The play turns into a circus, which is uh, very strange and very uh, unbecoming of a tragedy. You would uh, believe that a tragedy should be serious from um start to end, from start to finish. But this is not happening in Act 5. So, in order to perhaps make up for the absence of the Duchess, whose absence is going to be felt like you can never imagine. And of course, Webster knows that. That's why he, in order for not for the whole fabric of the play to collapse, he has those echoes. He makes her speak from a distance as if people are hearing her or echoes of her in order to keep her presence alive. But this is not obviously helping. So, in order to convey to readers and spectators that the Duchess' continued presence in the world of the play is, she's there, uh, you have those echoes where you have the characters speaking about the fact that they still hear her, like Busolo's words. Tell me things the Duchess haunts me. So she either appear to people as a ghost or they hear her voice. And then you have the echo scene is in a very real sense another haunting. Now, of course, we know that she is dead. Again, this is supernatural because this is actually not happening in real life. And you also have Antonio believing, not Antonio, I mean, there is this situation where um, we're made to believe that she is calling on him, saying, "Oh, fly your fate." And obviously, he misses this call. So again, when we talk about ghosts, this is actually one of the conventions of the revenge tragedy, where the dead are bringing, I mean, ghosts are bringing messages from the dead to the living from beyond the grave. And then we talk about retribution. And they call it consequences, and I call it retribution. Retribution means the settling of scores. You do something wrong, and then you pay for it. It's pay time. You pay. You receive what you give. You have given so much, and obviously you're given so much bad things. Now it's time to receive. It's time of retribution. And of course, the first example of just that would be Ferdinand and his lycanthropy. Lycanthropy is a delusion uh, or a delusional state of mind in which one imagines oneself to be a wolf or other wild animal. See? So he believes that he is now a wolf and he behaves like one. He believes that he has been transformed into a wolf whose skin is hair on the inside rather than the outside. Can you imagine? Again, this is mental collapse. So he is driven mad by guilt and a self-revulsion that convicts him of being no better than the most vicious of animals. So this feeling that he has, this lycanthropy kind of thing, this mental collapse, is obviously a judgment on his appalling cruelty with his sister and a reminder of the flickering moral awareness that he has always been part, that has always been his part, a part of his character. So he also believes that he is not only turned into a wolf, but he is also damned. What more torment and punishment would people imagine or have? And then you have the cardinal. And when we talk about the cardinal, he is also consumed with this feeling of guilt. Again, he doesn't stop. I mean, obviously, he is a big conspirator. He conspires to kill his mistress, the woman that he loves. He murders Julia, the mistress of whom he has grown weary, and through a poison Bible, which is another revenge tragedy convention. And then we're given a chance to see that he is also having those conflicts within his mind and soul. He believes that, I mean, he cannot pray. I mean, obviously, he believes that his prayers are useless because he knows full well that they will not be accepted. He expects to go to hell. He is not fully, he didn't go into this mental collapse that we're having with Ferdinand. But he is, of course, mentally disturbed. Yeah, I mean, he cannot, he doesn't feel that he's restless and what more, or what is worse than feeling that your prayers are not effective or even answered or accepted. And then you have Busola. Again, he has a lot to regret, of course, and feel remorseful about. Of course, he wants to repent, and repentance for him means more killing. He's going to try to protect on Antonio only to kill him. So he ends up inadvertently doing the cardinal's bidding, killing Antonio by mistake. And then in order to kind of atone for this, and I mean, he's going to kill the cardinal, and it's I mean the killing spree goes on and on and on. So the whole play turns into a savage farce, very comic, but comic in a very sardonic and in a very sad and unfortunate way. So it's grim humor that we're having. So it's a savage farce that we're having, everybody. And then you have the characters, those characters, dying words, which first of all you're going to see the stage littered with their corpses. I mean, they are obviously killed, and then they have their dying words. If anything, you need to always compare what they said in their dying moments to what the Duchess said. Obviously, there is a huge contrast. She was dignified and she was lofty and she was courageous when she died. But here, those guys are uh, very, I mean, their death are obviously useless. There is nothing noble about what about their death, and also what they reveal at the end uh, indicate that they now believe that what they did was for nothing, and they are nothing. They reflect on life and reality. Musola, for example, some of his dying words, he thinks, he talks about the nature of earthly existence. Uh, and he talks, I mean, in very grand terms, like always, because this is his nature. He says that we're merely the stars. We are merely the stars' tennis balls, struck and banded, which way please them. He says that we're mere tennis balls. And I would like you to think of this very vivid analogy that he is making. It's a very powerful metaphor. He says that we as human beings are tennis balls, and we're struck here and there by the stars. I mean, obviously, we have very little control over our actions. We're nothing. I mean, he's trying to say that we're mere tennis balls, struck here and there, back and forth. He's trying to say that human beings have no free will and no real significance. We are simply the playthings of probably malevolent cosmic forces. And very wise, but perhaps at the wrong time. And then we have Ferdinand, also in his dying moments. He says, my sister, oh my sister, there is the cause on it. Whether we fall by ambition, blood, or lust, like diamonds, we are cut with our own dust. It's all, again, about this idea of self-destruction, that we are prisoners of our own temperaments. We're driven by forces, passions, and instincts over which we have minimum control. See? So if Musola is focusing on the cosmos, Ferdinand's focus is the human personality. Again, they seem to agree on the fact that we have very little control over what we do in life. And then you have Antonio. Again, he's also pointing to the vanity of human ambitions and wishes. He says, in all our quest of greatness, like wanton boys whose pastime is their care, we follow after bubbles blown in the air. Of course, you know what a bubble is. So what is so characteristic about a bubble is that it is very short-lived. When you go and you catch it, it blows or it explodes. So it's as if you're chasing nothing. Don't talk to me about ambition. Don't talk to me about university degrees and doctorates. No, it's all bubbles that we're chasing. And once we reach them and we lay our hand on them, they just explode. A very vivid image indeed, but very pessimistic, especially for you. You're starting your lives. So the search for self-advancement is ultimately futile, useless in Antonio's eyes. And he is even warning his eldest son, saying, fly the course of princes, and thereby avoid the trap into which his father. I mean, he's trying to tell him, "Now, don't go and become inherit your mother and become the duke. No, don't. This is all futile." And then you have the cardinal, and the cardinal is more or less uh, is like Dr. Faustus at the end of the play when he wanted to perhaps dig a hole uh, uh, um, and kind of go inside it, or perhaps become a drop of water in the ocean nobody knows about. So this is exactly what the cardinal is saying. And now I pray, let me be laid by and never thought of. I want to dissolve. I want to become air. Nobody thinks of or uh, believe that I exist. I mean, he believes that he is very insignificant. And this is perhaps being insignificant is the only way that can keep his sanity and avoids him the punishment and the fate that is waiting for him in hell. So as you can see, in the absence of the Duchess, the principal male characters stumble and stagger towards death, persuaded by the vanity and meaningless of their lives. Again, as you can see, Act 5 is very grim. It may be humorous for some people, but it's a dark humor that we're having, very dark indeed. So out of the whole hustle, the Duchess alone appears both heroic, whether when she was alive or when she was dead. And this is obviously the end of the whole thing. And then you have Delhi also commenting on what life is and what life is not. And then we have a chance to hear from the young generation. And obviously, having the young generation is a sign of hope. It is true that it is grim, but we're having hope uh, in uh, the sense that we have children who appear at the end of the. We're talking, of course, about the children of the Duchess. Again, the question remains: what kind of tragedy is the Duchess of Malfi? And this is a question that I would like you to perhaps ask and answer. And that would be the end of the whole thing. I know this has been too long today, and speaking for long. I'm hopeful that you found the play interesting. Not interesting. Interesting wouldn't be the accurate or the proper word given the amount of blood and revenge and everything in it. But at least thought-provoking. I mean, the issues that it addressed were a lot, and they were also very relevant. Inshallah, when we meet again next time, we will do Candide. Candide is very interesting. It's very funny, but also in a very grim and very serious way. I think we have perhaps 4 more minutes for questions, if any. If you guys have any questions, come to the mic. I think you're tired. طيب, on this note, and with yeah, go ahead.
Victor,
Yeah,
I don't
go
have a
ahead.
question. I just want to remind you of what I said in the beginning with Dr. Miss Fatma.
I'll talk to her and let you know. Yeah,
Yes,
Jawhar.
if it can be in the same day, but at least 1 hour later from the actual time.
And that wouldn't be very fair to other people. But let's think of perhaps she can reschedule it, or let's think of the possibility of having a makeup. See?
Okay. Thank you.
I'll talk to her. You're welcome. طيب يا جماعة, on this note and with this item, we come to the end of today's lovely class. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. Bye bye.